When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
I hope people look to us as a model for sustainability, and one that's also rooted in some old-fashioned ideas. We call ourselves like a new paper with an old soul. I really hope this can prove to be, I think it already is proving to be a model of actually investing more in print and kind of going back to some of these analog things.
This is Small Press, Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gewertz. Small Press, Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. All right, today on the podcast, I'm joined by Will Bleakley. He is the CEO of the Midcoast Villager in Maine, and I reached out to him to come on the show, tell me about their organization, and looks pretty interesting. So I'm interested to get into this. And Will, thank you, man. Thanks for hopping on here. Good to meet you.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul. Excited to be here.
Yeah. It's our first time meeting, so if you could just help me and the audience just talk a little bit about your background, your career, your journey you've taken.
So I grew up in a very media family of reporters and journalists at New York Times and Wall Street Journal, and that was very much like part of me from the beginning. Went to Maine and just absolutely fell in love with the place, wanted to stay afterwards, and got into working at some local magazines here. Maine Magazine, a place called Down East. Down East Magazine it's in Midcoast, and that's kind of how I fell in love with that region, and that's where our newspaper is based out of, the Midcoast Villager. And then I did the move that everyone does of going from a local magazine to Facebook. It's a classic
I heard that one time and time again.
The two.
Yeah.
It's like a feeder system. And this was around, 2014, and it was back when there was a good relationship between Facebook and the news. Or at least wasn't. I think smart people realized how bad it was, and other people were just so excited by all the traffic that they didn't ask many questions. And I'll admit I was one of those people. But so I got there, and then went on a wild journey of being part of the news ecosystem and team at Facebook for the next kind of 8 years, which was fascinating and crazy, and taught me a lot. But it also taught me a lot about publishing and local news, because I had the experience already, but in this role, I got to work with primarily local publishers across the world, really, because I was part of this thing, the Facebook Journalism Project, and sort of a big thing I was part of and helped from early on were these local news accelerators. And it was really interesting because it seemed like the one place where Facebook could do some sort of good in this ecosystem, because with their resources, they were able to bring all of these local news publishers together from around the country to, probably a lot of people have been part of it that's in your audience, and to basically discuss, like, what do we do now? And it was interesting to also see, because it was a really good team of people overall, to see Facebook take an approach of like, we know we're a problem here, and what we can just do is kind of like pay some money to have people gather, and we're going to step back and then bring in some experts. And I got to meet so many great people and local news publishers while doing that. And I really got to see and work with people on what are the new things being tried. That was back when the idea of a membership model was kind of new and people were going off in that direction. And and then as one does, you start realizing you get burnt out and also realize how little you can actually change there. And eventually I moved back to Maine and got involved with these local papers here. And I kind of went the exact opposite direction. I had a real feeling of who likes the system of how we're defining connection and community on Facebook, and can't we get back to something that can combine some more forward-thinking digital innovations with also just an old-fashioned sense of people gathering to talk about news and have a physical newspaper and have that be a center of a community, Midcoast, Maine. So, yeah.
Very cool. Yep. Classic pipeline. People fall in one of two buckets on this show. They've either been in you're kind of in both, where their family roots go back in journalism or whatever, way back, sometimes generations.
Yeah.
And they've just been in it from the get-go. Or they do something completely different, kind of fall ass backwards into it. And you kind of did both. You did kind of both.
I did. I very much did both. I just ended up in that, and then went into I was like, okay, what's totally different from that, but still adjacent in the tech world, and then realized I don't really like that so much.
Yeah.
Could
you tell me a little bit about the Midcoast Villager? And I think it's more than just the Midcoast Villager, right? But the overall organization. Because on the website, the landing page, it sounds really interesting. It's kind of a mishmash of community, publications, magazine. I'll let you take it. Just talk a little bit about it. Yeah.
So basically, the person that owns it, Reed Brower, used to own about almost all of the papers in Maine, except for the Bangor Daily News and a couple of super small ones. And then he sold that to the National Trust. But what was left over from that was 4 papers in Midcoast, Maine, 2 sort of further up the coast. And then we also acquired the sort of last long, at least larger independent book publisher in the state. And as well as this building in Camden, which is a town in the Midcoast, that had a hotel associated with it, office space, and space for a cafe. And so we ended up kind of bringing all these things together by having so first we kind of, just take a step back, I was sort of brought in with how do we build a new media company within what we have here, and what should be kind of combined with it, and how do we make a better media ecosystem and for this area and a little bit the state at large, though it's kind of still mostly regional. And what we decided to do was really, we want to focus on how people can gather in person, how they can really connect with their community in a actual real way, that they are engaging with each other, they're meeting their neighbors and all this. So what we did was we started a cafe called the Villager Cafe, as well as we combined these 4 newspapers into one new paper called the Midcoast Villager. And we were able to get investment to be able to build this out based off of the premise that we want to have a physical location in the community. We want to have a physical presence in people's homes through a even better, more designed, I shouldn't say more designed, but just a print product that is something you want to keep around for the full week. It's a weekly paper. And at the same time, we have books being published that are about the state of Maine. That's under a place called Islandport Press. And we have 2 papers up the coast, Ellsworth American and Mount Desert Islander, that have been sort of long-term staples in their community and were also in a much better position than those Midcoast papers. And so that's why those were merged, but kind of everything else was left to sort of have as a a range of different sort of properties we have that can work together and feed off of each other and share some resources, with the thinking that we're greater than the sum of our parts if we kind of bring these things together.
Very cool. After you kind of outline it a little bit with the cafe and everything, are you familiar? Do you know of Max Cabot down in Marfa, Texas?
Yes. He was like the first person I called.
That's what he was on the podcast, and it's a really cool case study. I'm like, man, this really rhymes with that. I wonder if there's any inspiration there, or
He needs to come up and visit the cafe. No, he wants to. When he has some connection to Maine, and when I saw him in person, we'd yet to officially open. Actually, we hadn't even started the paper yet. But that was a very early call I made, and he gave some great advice on all of it.
Yeah, it's a cool story. If anybody's listening, and I'd go back and look for the episode with Max. It's also a really cool one. So that's very interesting. Because I loved Max's story. I love this story the same, of combining in-person actual community, especially coming from somebody who was at Facebook and Instagram, who claims to, I have a local Facebook group on my feed, and I tell my wife that's my dirty pleasure. I'll take some M's and I'll be like, I've given myself 20 minutes a week to just dive into the drama on there. I'm like, but it is not community. You know what I mean?
It's fascinating, but like that you're on there, it's not community. That's something that, we're actually trying to rework our mission statement a bit right now, because it sounds a little too fluffy, and just, I almost feel like the words like connection and community have lost a little bit of meaning. And at Facebook, what I just experienced there was their definition of like connecting community could mean just the most awful thing. And there's no like, all right, are we doing this in a way that's healthy at all? And I found that next question was kind of not addressed as much, but just if people were liking, commenting, that meant it was a meaningful social interaction, and therefore it was good. And I think there is much more to be done there, as I think most of your audience would agree to, than just that.
Very cool. A big kind of really the reason I started the podcast is figuring out how local news and information can be sustainable. So you kind of told me a little bit about it. Can you talk a little bit from the business side? Just like how you're monetizing, how you're making money. If you want, you could talk about what you were bringing up before we recorded, considering different options to take it.
Yep.
Just talk about that side a little bit. Like what's ringing the cash register and how's it working? Yeah.
Yeah. So I came in and it was about 80% advertising and 20% subscriptions, reader revenue. And I knew that needs to change. We could not be reliant on advertising to that extent. And so really our first big play was we need to make this a product that feels more of this place. It has a more central physical role in the area and has this a kind of new and exciting brand to it, even though I kind of hate using those terms. And with the idea that we need to boost our paying readership. We have it's a pretty small area. It's like, am I getting this right? 50, 60,000 or so. So we're not working with a lot, but we had a lot of room to grow. And so we really doubled down on this is something worth paying for. And we did that by giving people much more than they got before, combining all these papers to create a regional one. And so their paper doubled in size. We have more stories. We put more emphasis on something we actually brought in that I think is a little different is we brought in some people that had worked in magazines before. And so our designer, and I had a magazine background too, just to bring in a little. We did not stop doing the news. We doubled down on doing some sort of more solutions journalism. We brought in a solutions journalism editor, but we wanted to bring in a sense of fun and delight into it. We wanted to make a paper that really felt of the place and designed in a way that felt uniquely of this area. And that was a real play to try and get more people to see their identity in this and want to pay for the product and show that we're investing more. We're doing more longer stories, more investigative stuff, but also more profiles of your neighbors and having fun with it. And so what that led to, which was our huge win from our first year, is I think it was 40% increase in reader revenue. So now
Wow.
we've gone from like advertising basically holding to then an increase of, I think it was $250,000 to $300,000 for us, which is very meaningful.
Yeah.
For the small community, and that helped sort of tip the scales a bit to have it be closer to 35% overall, which of reader revenue, which is, I think, a better place to be. But the next stage we want to do is also bring in more philanthropy and grants. We're exploring what the best avenue to do that is, including, does that mean becoming a nonprofit in some way? Or can we transition to a B Corp? So we're looking at all the different options. The key for all of this is we can't stop working as if we're a business. And that's just the primary thing. Regardless of what our tax status is, we are still going to be 80 to 90% direct revenue from our local businesses, readers, but also the cafe. That's kind of a big piece of this. It's another place where, it's another low margin business, so we're kind of insane for being like, the cafe is the way to make a bunch of money. But we really do feel like, and we're seeing it play out, that they play off of each other. People come to the cafe. They like going there. You get breakfast and lunch and have a coffee. We have papers you can sit down and read. We have our editors there every Friday to be able to talk about local news stories and hear some tips from the community. We're increasingly holding more events there around discussions with local people, having panels, and we'll be doing more of that in the next year. And it plays off of each other in a really nice way. So we're able to have this whole piece that's a growing hospitality sector too, of people want, because people want to support local news. And so if they know, oh, this coffee is going to support local news, they're going to be more likely to buy that coffee. Same thing if you're hosting a birthday party and you want us to cater it. I think they're going to more likely be going to the place that, oh, this is also helps supports the community in this way. And so we're really figuring out what other roles we can play in that hospitality sector, because we know we live in a place that people want to be. And it has summer tourists and a great local community. So that wants to be getting to know each other and getting in person more. So the more we can facilitate these things, give people a great breakfast, and then give them an engaging paper to read, we just think and we're seeing it, all these things kind of click together to make something sustainable.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, bringing you an expanding library of education with even more ways to sharpen your trading skills. Access new online courses, insightful webcasts, articles, engaging videos, and more, all curated just for traders. Plus, guided learning paths with content designed to fit your unique interests. No sifting to find exactly what you need, so you can spend your time learning to trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's a really cool model. It's funny you kind of framed it as the cafe is another low margin business. I came up. My parents ran small restaurants growing up, and I remember I was like, I'm never going to start a restaurant or anything like that. It's just kind of what you learn being in the space. But I think that's kind of short-sighted for what you're doing. Just the actual community, it's like more than just a return on your capital money-wise. You know what I mean?
Yes, and that's what if we combine a bunch of low margin businesses and they can feed off of each other in some way. And, we have a book about oysters and this woman's journey becoming an oyster farmer coming out this summer through Islandport Press. We're going to have an oyster dinner at the Villager Cafe and have something there. We have, we profile people in the newspaper and then bring them to then play music at the cafe. And so there's this way they actually work together that I'm so happy to see is playing out in the way that I'd hoped it would.
Yeah, man, it's funny. This happens with the podcast. Things like never come up on the show, and then back to back to back, it always comes up. When you're talking about the books and how you're kind of tying that in. I
Mm-hmm.
just had a guy on the podcast yesterday who's kind of leading the new nonprofit that runs the Spokesman Review in Spokane.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a big it's called Northwest Passages, which is basically authors up in that region doing like readings of their books. And it's become a core thing for their kind of community driving efforts and stuff too. It's just funny that you're doing kind of similar kind of deal. You know what I mean?
A place I looked at early too, they have more of a kind of magazine, not as much hard local news, but Bitter Southerner was one that I always thought was a really good. They have some great books, and they were an interesting one to be looking at early on as we're seeing how these things can fit together.
Haven't seen that. I'll have to check that out. Very cool.
Yeah.
Switch gears a little bit because, like you said, you said Facebook. I wrote down Meta in the question. I don't know if it was Meta yet when you were there. And every time I get somebody on that was in the belly of the beast, I have to ask them about it. I had a guy named Dave Gehring on who was at Google forever, and now he runs I don't want to say the name wrong, but a startup in California for local media. But I like getting people, because from the outside, especially local media, they get framed as the villain a lot of times, these big bad corporations, because they did steal a lot of, hoover up a lot of revenue and attention and everything. But I'm just curious, any takeaways you took away from inside that the local publishers could find valuable, whether that means how people inside are actually thinking about it, tips on how to leverage the platform, whatever comes to mind. I'd like to get your takeaway since you were inside.
Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, I have nothing. I don't know if I have much new to add because everything's been leaked
Right.
from all of my teams that I was there. So it's like people are like, what was it like? I was like, well, you can read the New York Times article about it.
Right.
That's probably the best summation of things. But I have so many takeaways that probably everyone has caught on to by now. But one thing, I have lots of feelings about that place, but I can honestly say there wasn't anything like explicitly evil. It was, they're running a business, and
it's incentives. Yeah.
It's all incentives. And, I worked around the most like wonderful, smart, caring people about news and misinformation and all that we care about and your listeners care about. And then just whenever something possibly good could happen, it met the real world incentives of like, oh, this means losing money to like this degree. And so it's just a business, and that's what people need to know about it. And also that's how you need to interact with it. That's kind of what I kept feeling like people weren't acknowledging of early on, is there isn't actually any special designation. There might literally be in the algorithm, but that you're a news pulpit, you're a business, and you should use Facebook as a business in a way that gets people. You can get attention. It's really good for marketing, but that's how they operate. That's how you should operate. And they also just move really quickly and pivot really fast from things. And you can do that when you have trillions of dollars like they do. And you can have entire things that you abandon. But, as many people experienced, when you pivot to video in a news organization, that takes a lot of work and your focus. And that's not just like one team doing something on the side that then you have the luxury of just trying stuff out. So it was a place where, I was there for 8 years. I don't think my job stayed the same for more than 6 months, because it was like, oh, this is the new thing. This is the new thing. So,
I've heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Which kept it very dynamic and interesting, but you can't rely on them to stick with anything beyond advertising and what's going to make us money and get more people on the platform.
Right.
Which is how they're incentivized to do. Like, it's nothing. I guess I have a little against them, but it's not. It's understandable. And I think a lot of times when people talk about Facebook, they're actually just talking about the internet overall.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's just what the realities of the internet are. There's going to be something exactly like that if it didn't exist, and I think we'd be going through the same exact stuff. So, yeah, those are kind of my big takeaways. Yeah, it's a business. You're a business. Use them just like they're using you.
Right. Yep. Yeah, Dave, when you said they talk about Facebook, talk about the internet, Dave that was on the show who was at Google said the same thing. He's like, they just caught the craziest wave ever and grew exponentially with it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, not everything's great that they've done, but they become a scapegoat sometimes when it was always going to change when this technology arrived or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, there's a million things I wish they would do differently and do better. But also when you're incentivized to just grow your stock and increase shareholder value, and the way to do that is more advertising money and more users, that's going to win at the end of the day, which is why I'm very pro more regulation. I mean, that's the only thing that's really going to force them to have different motives.
Yep. Agreed. It seems like a good spot to pivot. Talking about the rise of the internet. It's 2026, so I have to ask everybody about AI. Curious your kind of thoughts on it. It's a big question. It can mean a lot of different things. If you're using it in the newsroom, in the business, overall thoughts, just, anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not using it really very much at all right now. We have nothing against figuring out the right ways to use it, but I will say I want to make sure for our business, it should be said, it can never replace a reporter. It can't replace editorial judgment. I mean, it is so important for us to feel like we are humans, and this is coming from people that live in this area and live and breathe it and can reflect that back to people. And that means making mistakes and having clunky sentences sometimes. And I'm a woodworker in my spare time, and it's better when there's little like nicks on it. When you can see someone made a little mistake here. It gets to a point where it's into sloppy, but anything that's too perfect then feels kind of dead. And so I never want that to basically anything that AI can help that will then like have us more focused on that and accentuate it, then that's great. So I don't have any like tips other than I know we're trying to look at it to, improve some workflows and help tag things. This is the kind of manual labor stuff that will let us get more to going out in the field, talking to people, writing about their stories, doing the investigative work, and that AI can never replace. They can't replace that. They can't replace going and talking to people in a cafe, having a discussion in person around whether or not the local dam should come down or not. We're wanting to invest in all the places where AI cannot replace us, and then use it in the place that can just make us be able to focus even more on that.
Yeah, I think that's the way to think about it.
Yeah.
Most people come on here and say something similar. Like, you can't replace. That's why local news, I think, has a moat against AI, because they can't get that final step of actually getting the information, getting the connections and everything. For some, the things that come up on here a lot are like people use Otter. They love Otter for transcribing stuff, going like through large data sets to help them parse out information. Like things like that is super useful for,
we were partnering with a place that whereas I didn't really take off, but it was called Civic Sunlight, and what they did was,
I think I've heard of them. Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
That they were taking local town meetings and summing them up, and we were using that to then bring it to our reporters so that they can better kind of like scan different, rather than having to sit through the full 4-hour thing, they could kind of scan what certain things were talked about and then go to the parts of the video that they could like look into further. It was like, oh, this seems interesting or pivotal, or this is something new.
Yeah, stuff like that, just saving time.
Yeah, which, even that, I think that there's real value to sitting through the 4-hour meeting.
Probably.
So I'm not like 100% like that's definitely the way, but I thought that was a good use case to be trying it. And I think a lot of reporters really appreciated it. And, I think we were having debates internally on, if an editor then looks at that and tweaks it and shares it out as sort of just a way to get a newsletter out about here's what was discussed at the town meeting. That was definitely a point of contention that we were kind of debating. The company ended up kind of not continuing, so we didn't ever put it into practice, but that was an interesting discussion around the office for sure.
Yeah, I've seen a few startups just like that with the city meetings in particular. One guy on the show, I loved his take on it. He loved it because he's like, before AI, he'd go to the council meeting or whatever it was and be furiously taking notes and not really be able to absorb everything.
Yeah.
He's like, now I go and I set my phone out and it's taking the notes and I notice all the human stuff. Like the commissioner, like rolling their eyes when they read something or looking over at the business owner when they're talking about, stuff like that. He's like, it actually enhances like stuff like that. So anyway, just one takeaway I learned on this podcast, which
100%
is a good way to look at it. Cool. So I've been asking everybody, flash forward 5 years. Do you have a strong vision for the Midcoast Villager? Where do you see yourself and your organization? Like, where would you like it to be 5 years' time from now?
I would really like in 5 years, this is probably an answer you get a bunch, but I hope people look to us as a model for sustainability, and one that's also rooted in some old-fashioned ideas. We call ourselves like a new paper with an old soul, and I really hope this can prove to be. I mean, I think it already is proving to be a model of actually investing more in print and kind of going back to some of these analog things. People are longing for some of that analog stuff again, just like how wired earbuds are back and vinyl record sales are like at a 20-year high or whatever.
Yeah.
But you have to marry that with being digitally savvy and knowing where people are. So, we know that not everyone's going to get their news from a print newspaper. In fact, we have way, way, way more people looking at us online. But I think a lot of people want to support a print paper and they want to have it around and they miss that tangibility in some way. And so I hope that, in 5 years, I can say that by investing in the physical place and where you are to make yourself more seen in a community and using that to your advantage to bring more readers in multiple different ways to create revenue is a path forward for how, really it's not just the path forward, but that it's a potential idea for the new kind of news bundle rather than the bundle being, you get sports and you get movie times and you get news and you get profiles in the crossword. You get greater access to your community. You get a coffee. You get a print paper. You get access to newsletters. You get to go to these events, and that we've helped sort of redefine what that could, or not redefine, but at least give an option for what that could look like for other communities that can see this working there.
Very cool, man. That's great. I'm sure you'll get there too. I'll be following along.
Appreciate it.
That's everything I had. Will, where can people find you online? Like, what do you want me to link to or promote or anything like that?
Just go to the midcoastvillager.com. You can donate, subscribe. You go to villagercafe.com and get our merch is really good. I got a hat right here. This is our little logo.
I like that. I like that logo. Yeah.
And we have some great stuff there. And I guess you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get better at it. I'm not the best. Being earnest on LinkedIn is not easy for me, but I'm going to try and do it more. So yeah, those are the places.
LinkedIn's this weird thing because it's so cringeworthy sometimes. I live on it because I meet so many cool people. If you can get past the cringe and actually have conversations like this, it's actually really cool.
I need to, or at least do it in a way that then feels not cringy to me, but is still effective. But then, I don't know. I have to workshop my tone on LinkedIn. Just find the right balance between who I am and what will be useful for myself and other people.
Right. Awesome. Will, thanks so much. Thanks for joining me. Hope you have a great day, man. Great meeting you.
Thanks so much, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.